There's commonalities with a lot of toxic parents, and today I want to zoom in on just 7 of them. Hang on. So welcome to Ask a Shrink. Yes, today I want to zoom in on 7 commonalities that are prevalent and apparent with having toxic parents. Now there are indeed way more than 7, but I'm going to focus in on these 7 in particular so we can unthread them a little bit and understand just these 7 a little more deeply, although many more may apply to you if you're being raised by a toxic parent. So this video is not only for parents out there who may be watching this and you can maybe hopefully have an aha moment like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that, or for you kids out there who are being raised by toxic parents. I want to give you some insight and clarity and objectiveness to how you're being raised perhaps. So number 1, sometimes we all want to put the blame on somebody. You know, we don't want to deal with it. We'll blame him, we'll blame her. Well, it's one thing to do that when you're 6 years old or something and the teacher or your parent can tell you why that's not acceptable behavior, but it's a completely different thing when your own parent is scapegoating you. So number 1 is scapegoating. Can you imagine scapegoating your own child, a child who's trying to grow up, but because you need to blame your adult problems on somebody and your world's not the way you like it and you're unhappy in love or life or career or whatever it is, you scapegoat a kid and just blame them for everything. A lot of narcissistic parents tend to do this, but it can be anybody really. Somebody who's just having a real crummy year and they don't want to deal with it or take responsibility, so they start blaming a child, scapegoating a child. Now this can rotate or it can be one particular child on an ongoing basis. And what it does is it gives illusion to the family members who are witnessing the scapegoating or the parent who's actually doing the scapegoating. It gives them an illusion that they're actually better and healthier and more adjusted than they really are. Because of course they're not, because they're allowing the scapegoating to go on, but they have this illusion that things are better. And that's how the scapegoating permeates itself over time. Number 2 is wearing the child down on some level purposely. Now that can take the form of mocking, making fun of, eye rolling, oh good Lord, why did I give birth to you? Snide remarks, snide comments, outwardly laughing at them, making them the butt of jokes purposely in front of friends or family. So this is where you're wearing the child down. This is toxic, and it's truly a reflection about how the offending parent feels about themselves, that their self-esteem is this big inside that they feel the need to put down one or all of their children. Number 3 is being passive aggressive. Most of you know what that's about. It's when somebody is really angry or upset inside. They don't want to show it because they don't want people to think less of them. So they maybe put on a happy face, a happy mask, but then they're brutal with their comments. They're going to get you back one way or the other, and they're going to find ways to jab you, put you down, humiliate you, but all under the guise of being friendly and nice. That way you're unable to challenge them on it because they're saying it so sweetly or nicely. Something so vicious and harmful is said with a happy face. That's being passive aggressive. This can include backhanded compliments, playing the victim, and even the silent treatment. So if you're a victim of the silent treatment, you have a very toxic parent there. Number 4 is gaslighting, and gaslighting is exceptionally cruel because think of a child growing up, maybe age 3, 4, 5, 6, when you're very young. Your world is your mommy and your daddy, right? That's all a kid knows. They don't know anything else. And they believe everything out of their parent's mouth because they're so young. And with gaslighting, the parent is twisting, evading, or somehow marginalizing the truth. Now, kids are bright and they can see when a parent's lying. Quite often they can tell. So then they wonder, why are they twisting the truth like this? They're saying they saw this, but I saw something else, and the kid can't make sense of it, of course. The child is left with incredible self-doubt because they're growing up not really trusting their own instincts, not knowing what to believe. This can affect their confidence and their self-esteem as well. A gaslighting type of parent will call their kid a liar, a cheat when they didn't lie or cheat. So they weren't just having a cocktail over there at the kitchen counter, but in reality the kid saw them having a cocktail at the kitchen counter. Make promises to the kid that they break the next day and said, I never promised you that. Or telling their kids something's their fault when in reality it's not their fault at all. Maybe they were jumped and beaten up on the way to school. They come home with bruises and blood on their face and the parent says it's your fault. Well, it wasn't the kid's fault. So that's a form of gaslighting. Number 5 is the single out game, making one child be better or less than the other, the comparison game, if you will. Now, we all know that the healthiest thing, as much as a parent can do if they have several children, is to treat them all equally as much as possible. Of course, they're all different. They have their own personalities or different ages, of course. But you're not going to do the comparison game with them, because that's going to affect the child's self-esteem if she or he is not doing as good or better than their sister or brother, and the parent is pointing that out. Whether it's truthful or not truthful, it doesn't need to be pointed out all the time. The toxic parent who's doing this is usually doing it out of control, and they want to try to control their children. They want to try to control their view of them as the parent. On some level, they're wanting to control the relationship between the siblings. They're using that to their benefit. So they're going in there in a very rational, manipulative way often, and being divisive on some level, clearly favoring one over the other, making unhealthy or unreasonable or untrue comparisons. And they're doing this for their own sense of power. Number 6 is shaming the child when it's not even appropriate and they perhaps didn't do anything wrong. Blame goes along with the shame. Basically, for example, it's pointing out something rather insignificant. Maybe your daughter stepped on some gum. Your daughter's 6, kids step on gum, it's on their shoe, okay? But you'll make a big deal out of it and blame it on a defect in your daughter's character or something, magnifying everything, which in turn is going to shame the child. And this can be done sometimes on a daily basis by toxic parents. Also, the parent uses phrases like, you always, or you never, or you're all about this. Well, if a kid's 5, 6, 7, how are they supposed to defend against that when their own parent is telling them that, which is a complete untruth? Because nobody always and nobody nevers. Life is much more about being in that gray area, but instead of pointing out that large gray area, the parent zooms in. They're very black and white, very rigid, and uses comments like you always and you never, and usually it's followed by some derogatory comment after that. And lastly, I'll bring up emotionally smothering a child for their own benefit, which is emotional incest. I've done some videos on emotional incest. You can click up right now if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that. In a nutshell, it's when a parent is unhappy in their life with themselves, in an unhappy marriage, whatever it is, they are miserable. And their way of dealing with this, instead of getting some therapeutic help to share their feelings and work through their adult problems, they decide they're going to take over one of their own children for their benefit, turn them into a little mini husband or mini wife, kind of block out and put walls up to their significant other if they're in a relationship, and just focus on the child. And they take the child with them and tell them all their adult problems and dote on them and single them out from their other siblings. And by the way, the other siblings are aware of what's going on and wonder what's wrong with me. But the bottom line is the parent is taking over one of their own children for their own benefit, for their own emotional needs. And that is very sick and destructive. So I hope these 7 traits help some of you out there. Again, whether you're a parent, if you catch yourself with some of these, you need to stop it. I would advise you to go get some therapeutic help to understand why you're doing it. And if you're a kid growing up, you could either be a young kid or an adult kid. Please realize none of this was your fault. You did nothing wrong. You happened to be raised by a very toxic parent. And also, even though I just zoomed in on 7, there's so many more. Be aware of those red flags. If you're a kid growing up and you sense there's a red flag with something, but you're not sure about it, talk to an adult, talk to somebody you trust, talk to your school counselor, because I don't want you carrying this weight around the rest of your life. Please leave me some comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about these 7 traits. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.